Hi there. Today we're going to move through our pelvis with the help of some Franklin balls. And then towards the end of today's movement practice, we'll do a little bit of 4-point kneeling just to get our spine moving and to work on a little bit of stability work. So we'll set those Franklin balls off to the side for now. Come to lie on your back, knees bent, feet flat. And we'll start with 3 deep, full breaths. So as you inhale, filling up your rib cage 3-dimensionally. And as you exhale, feeling those ribs narrow. As you inhale, feel the air filling your rib barrel, front, sides, and back. And exhale, melt into that mat. One more time, nice big inhale. And exhale, soften and melt into your mat. All right, you're going to landmark your hip points, those parts that stick out at the front of the pelvis. And you're going to rock those hip points towards your ribs on an exhale. Rock them away from your ribs on an inhale. Exhale, hips towards ribs. Inhale, hips away from ribs. Hips towards ribs on an exhale. And hips away from ribs on an inhale. The breath is a tool, not a rule. So follow that breath cue if it's helpful. If not, be very gentle with yourself and just continue to breathe. So when those hip points roll towards the ribs, can you also feel that the hip points are moving towards the back of the body? Hold it there, hip points towards the back of the body. We call this a posterior pelvic tilt. Now roll the hip points away from the ribs. Hold it there. Notice how the hip points have pressed more to the front of the body, the anterior side of the body. We call this an anterior tilt. So as the hip points roll back in space, posterior tilt. As the hip points roll forward in space, anterior tilt. You're going to listen with your fingertips and see if your right and left sides are rolling back together and rolling forward together. Most of us have a discrepancy between the two sides. So you're taking this moment just to listen. Do my right and left pelvic halves move together? Are they symmetrical? Or are they a little bit different? And I think most of us will find we're a little bit different side to side. See if as you're rolling that pelvis forward, hip points away from ribs, and back, hip points towards ribs. See if you notice that one pelvic half is a little more prone to rolling forward. And that would relatively make the other pelvic half a little more prone to rolling backwards. All right, we're going to pause. Pick up those Franklin balls. Place balls under the pelvis. You're aiming to put the balls on either side of your sacrum. So they're right in sort of the fleshy part of the glutes, right beneath the hip joint. So you can kind of see on the video where I've got my right fingertips in my hip crease pointing right down. And if I go into a hip fold, that thigh bone is lined up fairly closely in line with that ball. So it should feel comfortable. And hopefully you can feel fairly relaxed on those balls. So maybe shuffle the balls a little bit down, a little bit up, and just find that place where you can melt into the balls. So take a nice inhale, and then exhale, let yourself melt the pelvis like ice cream on a warm day, just dripping over those balls. And then we go back to our pelvic tilting, rocking those hip points towards the ribs. Pelvis is rolling backwards. Rocking those hip points away from the ribs. Pelvis is rolling forwards. Now we're keeping our butt muscles fairly easy. They are responding to the movement of the pelvis as you roll the pelvis back and roll the pelvis forward, but we're not clenching, gripping, squeezing, right? Neck and shoulders are relaxed, collarbones are wide, and we're just letting that pelvis flow. Now, you might have had an inclination as to which pelvic half rolled back more than the other on the mat. And just see if you can connect to that while you're pelvic tilting with the Franklin balls. Does one pelvic half roll back with a little more ease? And remember, rolling back is when the hips come towards the ribs and the hip points shift to the back of the body. And then start to notice the opposite. Does one pelvic half roll forward a little bit more than the other? So this is when the hip points move away from the ribs. When those hip points move away from the ribs, they also press a little more to the front of the body. That's our anterior tilt. And so notice, does one hip point sort of lead the charge as I rock the pelvis anteriorly? Now, we'll pause. For some of us, it'll be rather clear that one side of the pelvis rolls forward a little more and the other side of the pelvis rolls back a little more. If that's clear for you, I invite you to think about the side of the pelvis that rolls forward a little bit more. And on that side, you're going to move the ball down just a half centimeter or so. And then you're going to think about the side of the pelvis that rolls back a little bit more. And you're going to move that ball up no more than a half centimeter towards your head. So now you've got these balls that are perhaps a little bit askew, right? One's a little lower, one's a little higher. And we go back to our pelvic tilting, rocking the hip points towards the ribs, pelvis is rolling back. Rocking the hip points away from the ribs, pelvis is rolling forward. But perhaps with the balls a little offset, we're actually supporting our own pelvis in a little more balance. And so you're rocking anteriorly, hips away from ribs, posteriorly, hips towards ribs, and letting that pelvis flow in both directions. Lots of ease through the base of the pelvis. Neck, chest are relaxed, and shoulders are relaxed as well. Pause with that pelvis balanced in center. And we're going to go into a bent knee press out. So we press our knees out to the sides of the room, roll to the outside edges of our feet, and then we press so that the knees point back to the ceiling. So we press our knees open, roll to the outside edges of the feet, and then we gather up muscle connection from our inner thighs and we press the knees back to the ceiling. So as we inhale and open the knees, the inner thighs lengthen, and we exhale and bring the knees to the ceiling and the inner thigh muscles shorten. Use that inhale, control the opening of the legs, and exhale, press the knees to the sky. So lots of motor control here as we do our bent knee press out to the side and then press back to neutral. Perhaps we'll feel that lengthening go through the inner thighs and right into pelvis. We'll feel some sort of base of pelvis lengthening. And exhale, we feel the shortening. One more time, we press knees out to the side. And then press knees to the ceiling. We're going to lift up off of our Franklin balls, settle our pelvis on the floor. My pelvis usually feels very different after that series. And go into a couple pelvic tilts on the mat and make a little recording to see, does my pelvis feel different? Personally, I feel a little more balanced left to right. And I also feel more grounded. Like I really am melting into the floor a little bit more. It's a nice feeling. And then we'll pause from our supine work and come over into 4-point kneeling. So pressing up onto all fours. And we'll start with a couple of cat-cows. So we'll round that spine up, belly button coming towards low back. And then we'll dip that spine down, shining our breastbone towards the wall and floor at our heads. We'll round up and then shine that breastbone. See if you can get a little lift, like we're sending our breastbone towards where the wall and floor meet at our heads. Round and dip. And I want you to feel as you round, the back of the body lengthens from the base of your skull all the way to your tail. And then when you dip, the front of your body lengthens from your pubic bones all the way through your breastbone into your throat. Round, feel the length from tail to base of skull. Dip, feel the length from pubic bones up through your midline all the way to your throat. So feel the length at the back of the body when you round, length at the front of the body when you dip. And then we'll pause. Ending with a little bit of stability work. We'll do a bird dog slide. So I want you to press your limbs into the floor, arms and legs. Anchor through your right arm, left leg, and only your opposite limbs will move. So the left hand, right foot slide out on the ground or mat. and then they slide back in. We switch our anchors, left arm, right leg, push the floor away, and slide the gesture limbs out and slide them in. Find that anchored right arm, left thigh, and slide the opposite limbs. Slide back in. Find that diagonal anchor, left arm, right leg, and we slide out. So the trunk is not moving. Slide in. If you want a breath pattern, anchor, exhale, slide out. Inhale, slide in. Anchor, exhale, slide out. Inhale, slide in. Can you sense that there's no change in length at the front or the back of the body? You're keeping your ribs in line with your pelvis in line with your ribs, and you're feeling almost like suspenders connecting your ribs and your hips at the front of the body, getting more support through that core. Last time, I want you to push the ground away, like you're going to push your floor a millimeter closer to the basement. Last one, push the floor a millimeter closer to the earth center. Come to sit. We'll give those shoulders a little roll. And you are all done.